Hey, everybody. Welcome back to Mish Men. We're here on another episode. We're excited to have a guest with us today. But before that, let me introduce my partner in crime, Mr. Dusty LeBar.
Hello, everybody.
So it's always funny because one time I slipped up and said my sidekick.
Yeah.
You don't want to be the sidekick?
I don't like that at all. No,
You're Batman.
He did not like that. Well, I'm Batman.
Yeah. I'm like super Batman.
I'll let you guys fight over that.
That was fun. So then he returned the favor the next one. So.
Yeah.
But anyway, we have a special guest with us today. We're going to interview Mrs. Anna-Sara Sandlin.
Hello. Happy to be here. Thanks for having me.
And we're happy to have you too. This is the reason I reached out to you is because, one, you ask about the podcast occasionally, and I work occasionally with Anna-Sara. She helps us find employees for my work and for a number of other folks. So she works for a firm that finds people, especially niche people sometimes, and so we're going to talk about job market, hiring actions, that sort of thing. So
interesting.
Yeah.
So here we go.
Here we go.
So if you could, Anna-Sara, just a little intro. Tell us about yourself.
Sure.
Like where you're from and
where I'm from. Yeah. Personally, I was born and raised in Florence, Alabama, not too far from here. So. Went to school at the University of Alabama, got my degree there in marketing.
University of Alabama, Huntsville?
University of Alabama, Tuscaloosa Roll Tide.
There we go. Oh, boy.
Had to throw that in there.
Yeah, I figured.
That's where I met my husband. And yeah, I had a lot of jobs throughout college. A lot of interesting jobs. I think what got me interested in marketing and sales and, dealing with people was working at a restaurant. I loved being a server through college, loved getting to interact with people, loved the hustle and the bustle of that type of thing. So coming out of school with a business marketing degree and that experience working in a restaurant, I just knew I wanted something fast-paced and sales related. And so got a job opportunity to move up to Nashville after I graduated to start with my company, which is Insight Global that I work for. Started out as a recruiter there, loved it, fell in love with the recruiting space. And we lived there, my husband and I, for 8 years. Nashville was a great place. Yeah.
How'd you like being a recruiter?
Loved being a recruiter. Yeah. Loved it. It's just really fun, kind of playing that matchmaker role, getting to interview and talk to people, and it felt really gratifying when you got to help someone land their dream job, which sounds a little cheesy, but it to be a part of those big moments in someone's life is pretty cool. There's a lot of hard parts about it, right? Also having to let people down and let them know they didn't get a job, or unfortunately kind of comes with the territory having to let someone go from a job. Those are the things that you do in this industry too, but I loved that role. Yeah. So I did that for about a year. And then stayed in Nashville, like I said, for about 8 years. And it was hard to leave, but my husband and I wanted to grow our family, and we're, being from North Alabama, we decided to move here to Huntsville. So we've been here, going on 4 years.
Nice.
Yeah. We love it.
You have, you're growing your family.
Growing our family. So I have a 2-year-old little boy. Cool. And a little girl on the way. Coming in June. Yes.
Oh, wow. Yeah. That's awesome. Oh, you mentioned that. That's right. Yeah. That's awesome. Yeah. It's very exciting.
Yeah. So definitely excited about that. It's a lot to balance, working full time, having a really busy career, and being a mom, but wouldn't have it any other way.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
So Dusty and his wife just had their first child last year. We're coming up on a year, right?
Congratulations.
Yep, she's just about 10 months old right now.
Awesome.
Yep. Yeah. She'll be 11 months. She'll be a year in March.
That's about the same time we started the podcast.
We literally started this podcast, and then
you were like, I got to get out of the house.
Well, I was like, we started the podcast, and I was like, hey, I have to go. We're going to the hospital. We can't record. We're going to have to push everything a week, because it was like right before we started. But Laura also just went back. She started 3 days a week when she got done with her maternity leave, and now she's back to 4 days a week. So I know it's stressful on her, and with, fast pace, being a mom, all that kind of stuff. So it's
a lot to balance.
Yeah,
it's a lot to balance. But I'm very passionate about what I do. So I moved from the recruiting role to my role now It's an account director is the title. Basically, I have a team of recruiters, and their job is to find candidates who are in the job market.
Okay.
On my side of the table, I'm finding the jobs for them. So I'm, reaching out, building relationships to companies that for whatever reason are struggling to hire the right people. Okay. Building those relationships with them, understanding what they do, what type of people they look for, and then working hand in hand with my recruiting team to match the right candidate with the right job.
So your team is working on the people side and you're working on the actual business side, working with the
exactly.
business. That's cool. That's
Cool. So I've been doing that job for about 8 years now.
Okay, that's awesome. How many people do you have under you that are searching for recruits on a daily basis?
As a company, we have about 2,000 recruiters. It's a huge company.
Yeah.
It's global.
Yeah, Insight Global. Yeah.
Oh.
It's in the name. But so I truly talk to 50 different recruiters throughout the week. I'll talk to a recruiter who lives in Colorado Springs, and they just so happen to speak with a candidate who wants to relocate to Huntsville, and so they call me about him, right? But in my direct, dotted line reports, I have just a team of 2, and they're awesome. So they're really more assigned to filling positions for my customers.
Gotcha.
But yeah, we've got an awesome team of recruiters.
What's the scope? What I work with you with is filling up like engineering roles, software engineering, computer engineering, that sort of thing. But what's the scope of your portfolio? Is it like completely wide open? Is it just office jobs? Is it some other things?
As a company, we will give it a go with anything, right? Any position, whether it's on the floor, manufacturing, accounting, business, finance. Here in Huntsville, it's going to be heavy engineering just because that's industry, that's a big need for a lot of companies here. My portfolio in particular leans heavy towards IT, engineering, a lot of, management, logistics, things of that nature. But there's not much that we won't try to fill. I mean, most of the time companies don't have a lot of trouble filling straightforward positions that are more, whether they're entry level, managerial, don't require a lot of technical expertise. That's not what we're usually brought in for. We're usually brought in when, number one, a position it's a really, like you mentioned, a really niche skill. Mm-hmm. They have to have a specific certification or a very specific background, or if they need someone really quickly. So let's say, you need to get someone in the next 2 weeks. We're really good at making that happen quickly. The other scenario that comes up a lot is volume, right? So you win a project or a program and you need to scale up by 50 people in a month. That's going to be really hard to do internally without some extra support. So,
all right.
Laura my wife is a physical therapist.
Okay.
And when we originally moved, she was working with a recruiter and they still send her stuff from time to time. So, it's a little bit different, but she still be like, hey, do you want to move to Alaska? Sometimes I'm like, yeah, I do want to move to Alaska.
It's good to hear about what's out there.
Yeah, heck yeah.
I think having a relationship as a candidate in the job market with a recruiter that has proven to be helpful, communicative, responsive, it can't hurt, right? To have those relationships, even if you're not actively in the market, to have someone who that if you ever wound up in a bad place or looking for your next opportunity, it's good to have those relationships.
So I have observed in my working career, which goes back a bit, that internally companies trying to find somebody, the HR department isn't given enough latitude, I think, maybe.
Yeah.
And so they sometimes struggle with that. But in a firm like yours is much more, again, in my experience, they seem to be more aggressive in a good way. Like they're ready to go. They're active because that's all they do.
Right.
So can you address that a little bit? Like what sets you apart from just Dusty and I start the podcast and we need to hire people? We could do that ourselves. So why are you a value add rather than Dusty and I doing the hiring?
Few things there. I think internal HR departments are sometimes it's a bandwidth thing, especially at a large company. They have thousands of, positions that they're trying to work through. They also have internal HR has things to deal with like benefits and, just there's a whole lot of things that are on their plate. So I think it's for some companies, it's a bandwidth issue for those internal teams. Secondly, companies like ours, in my role specifically, my recruiter's role specifically, we're commissioned. It's sales. So, every time, someone is hired for a job, I get a commission from that. So for someone who's motivated by, money, really, and opportunities for uncapped commission, it's super motivating to be aggressive, have a sense of urgency, and come through.
What if, so somebody's looking for an awesome person, you send them, you get this person hired, and then you get paid based on when those person gets hired, correct?
Right.
What happens if that person almost instantly doesn't work out, which I'm sure happens sometimes?
You stop getting paid.
They just really? Is that what happens? So like if they fire them like 3 days in, they're like, this person is not going to work. They fire them.
Usually we wouldn't bill a customer if they only make it 3 days.
Gotcha.
We'll write that one off. We do get it wrong sometimes, right? Sure. We can have someone who we believe is very qualified to do the job. Our customer interviews them. They believe they're qualified to do the job. Mm-hmm. They get in there and they can't live up to what they say, or they don't show up, or, sure, any number of things. And that happens. If it happens that quickly, then you try to find someone else, right? Gotcha. You try to quickly identify another resource that can lead to more longevity. Gotcha. But
how do you guys find your candidates and filter through what you recruit? From no one's looking for a job. You're surveying the field. You try to find people all the way through whatever process you have internally to offer up, and you call Adam like, hey, I have a guy for you. You need to see him.
There's a lot of steps between those two things. It starts out, my recruitment team, we utilize a lot of the same tools that, an internal team or other companies would. A lot of the job boards, LinkedIn, face-to-face networking, referrals from current employees. So there's a lot of, entry points to starting to source for candidates. And a lot of people are going to take your call. It's just about, at that point, that's where my job comes in. Those candidates are getting lots of calls from others as well. So it's about, how do you spark their interest in the opportunity that you have for them? How do you sell the position to them, highlight the perks, make sure that they're going to be, interested and engaged throughout the interview process, and that they're knowledgeable about what the job is. So, every candidate that we are working with has that initial interview with my recruiter from wherever they're sourced, and then I'll interview them. And then we're going to talk to some references. We're going to do some due diligence. So there's 4 or 5, I don't know if you want to call them interviews, conversations, leading up to me calling you or calling my customer and saying, hey, I've got someone I think you should talk to.
Gotcha. Talk to us a bit about those interviews. Like what? Yeah. Because I shared with you before the podcast my little thing that I use as a filtering mechanism and focusing mechanism. But what do you guys look for? Because you've achieved some amount of success finding people that fit in.
Yeah. It's, my goal when I'm getting to know a company, an organization, is to figure out what they do, right? What is their mission? What is their scope of work? And what type of people fit into that? So for every position, it's going to look different. And so I'm trying to really have a good understanding of what are the main things you need. I know there's a lot of things that you would want, but what are the core things you need? Is it more aptitude, personality, effort? Is it more of that niche certification, technical skill? Is it a blend of both? And, do you need someone junior, senior? There's so many different factors. So every one of those conversations looks a little different. I think that's the thing is like, I don't have a script I go by for every position because there's so many variables. But we do run them through obviously the opportunity, ensure that their qualifications meet the requirements. And then we just really try to get to know them. I mean, just talking to them about, why are you in the market? You can learn a lot about, someone from just getting them to open up about, what do you like about your current job? What do you not like? What are you looking for as a next step? So there's a lot of different, questions that we go through, as well as a lot of technical questions. So.
Yeah, I was going to ask because my company specifically, they reorganized probably about 6 years ago, and they really focus on hiring people based on their core values, which is an intangible thing. Like it's just, it's almost like it when you see it.
Hard to nail down.
So that's like a challenging thing because they may say, hey, I want somebody that has these core values, but it must be hard for you to nail those down because they try to sort it out during an interview, a long interview process. But for you, it must be a little bit more challenging to figure out exactly what that person's thinking is the intangible, and everything looks different to different people.
Yeah. In that situation, if your company was my client, I would want to understand what do those core values look like to you, and then when I'm screening a candidate for your company, I would probably be asking them give me an example, in your last role where you may have displayed this core value. And I think, I like to think I'm good at reading people and, good at, understanding people. So I can usually vet out if someone's giving an honest and, vulnerable answer. So, yeah.
I'm sure sometimes you have to be aware of the fact that a person just may lie.
And that's always going to happen, right? And some people are good liars. Yeah. And those are usually the people that aren't going to work out, and that's going to happen.
She gestured towards me. I'll have you note.
That you're not going to.
I'm not going to work out.
Yeah.
Wasn't it you? No.
She's like, nobody in particular, but somebody may not work out.
He may not be here next week. I don't know, guys.
We didn't do a good vetting process for the podcast.
We'll have to remove the left icon.
So yeah, I mean, we work with a recruiter from time to time, somebody that brings positions to us, but my bosses are very particular. They would rather train the skills and hire the personality than the other way around. So, I know that must be, in my brain, what you do is could be frustrating at times because you have to work through all those, like we just talked about, people maybe not telling the truth. And there's some mix of like, this person has a lot of experience, but maybe they don't have exactly that. So there's and I think a lot of companies are going that way. Like there's definitely some experience required, but like these companies are like, I'll train the skills and hire the person.
Right.
I would honestly much rather hear that from a client than the opposite. We need 20 years of this one specific, I think it's a lot easier actually to identify someone who has, more value-based, more aptitude-based qualities.
Sure.
And the foundational knowledge of what they need to get the job done. Just because it opens it up to a pool of people that it might not have otherwise. But yeah, it can be frustrating, and you're dealing with people that, they're unreliable at times. And so there's only so much that's within your control.
That's right.
So
yeah, I understand.
I'm sure that you have customers. They come in a variety of shapes and sizes too when it comes to personality and expertise, and that how easy they are to work with. Yeah. And so, of course, you don't have to trash anybody.
I would never.
I'm sure you wouldn't, especially not on a podcast. But there's probably a challenge of like, okay, this guy is needy, and he's going to want a little more of just like experience, like the example you used. And less about this other thing, even though we know in spite of that, like when you go to work, someone's experience really has little to do with how easy they are to get along with. Yeah. I would rather work with nice people that are willing to work. And then that's 90% of the job right there. But anyway, you have a difference in the customer base. How do you deal with that?
Well, the secret truth behind, the curtain.
It's no secret anymore. Our 100 listeners will.
If I'll always give it a shot, right? But if we're trying time and time again, and I feel we're bringing you really good options, and you're saying no, or you're dragging your feet, or you're moving slow, then your position just won't get prioritized. I mean, because we are incentivized by, our numbers. We're a numbers-based organization. My team of recruiters is going to move on. They're going to focus on another position for a customer who is more flexible and will move quickly. And so ultimately, I think folks like that find themselves in a position where that requisition might stay open for a year if you're not going to bend on anything, right? Yeah, right? I'm always willing to sit down and have a conversation and say, okay, how can we open this up? Is it, can we knock off a couple years of experience? Can you be flexible to a hybrid schedule instead of full-time on site? Like, I'll get creative with you for sure. But ultimately, if there's just, if what you're asking for is the purple unicorn, as they say, and it's not out there.
I'm already working. I already have a job.
Right. Yeah. Then, it's not going to happen.
Do you ever have, so companies hiring, do you ever have them try to skirt your organization? Like which would be like shady, like, oh no, we're not going to hire this person, but they have the contact information. And
it happens to me early in my career.
Yeah.
I learned the hard way that until you have really developed a relationship and trust with your customer on both ends, really not to give too much. So I had that happen early in my career where I was meeting with a new company. We didn't have an agreement with this company. I was just trying to get my foot in the door, sent them a resume, and they ended up, reaching out to the person directly on LinkedIn. And I think I found out 6 months later, the guy was employed there and was a little obviously upset by that, but I decided to let it go. I haven't had it happen in a long time. I like to believe people, most people are going to do the right thing. And, kind of learning my lesson on making sure that we've got some things in writing. We've got agreements in place before we get too far into the process. So
that makes sense.
We also scrub resumes. So I don't send a resume that has contact information on it to any of my customers because I want to remain in control of the process and in the loop.
Sure. That makes sense.
Yeah.
Yeah, you basically send them what they need to know, the information they need to know, and they don't need to know anything else.
That's right.
Until they hire them, right? Then they're yours. You can have them.
You can do whatever. Yeah, I gotcha.
Yeah, but
what's I'm sure you've had some interesting, or you might have some interesting stories from your interviews with people.
Yeah.
So if you could share some of those. You don't have to use the names, obviously.
Oh, man.
Unless they're famous, then use the names.
Yes.
No one famous. Yeah. I wish. I've had, I've had people hang up in the middle of an interview when they realize that they weren't qualified for the job. That's happened many times. And most of the time I'll sit in on the interview as well. So you're kind of cringing on the other end of the line, or those are for the virtual interviews. I've had that happen a few times where someone just hangs up. Actually, probably the weirdest thing, this was, years ago, I had someone bring their dog and not a service dog to the interview. That was an interesting one. She did get the job.
Did that person,
what about the dog?
Yeah.
The dog was very sweet the whole time and just...
Did they comment on why they brought the dog, or was it like a really funny thing where nobody knew why the dog was there?
I actually don't think... I think initially when we walked in, we were all like, oh, and we assumed it might be a service dog. Later I found out it wasn't, and the dog... Yeah.
That's a bold move.
It is a bold move.
It worked. It was a cute dog. I don't know.
A duck. Yeah. You're just like...
Yeah, a duck would have been more interesting. I don't even know. I don't know if I should share this one. This was once I had someone actually get hired. They were a few months into the job, and sent a text to my customer, their manager. Miscommunication. The guy thought he was texting his drug dealer when in fact he was texting his boss. And the text message was very clearly, wanting to buy drugs. And so I had to fire him. That was fun. That was a fun one.
So you get to fire that person.
If
the company doesn't work for, or the company that they work for now, you still have to fire them?
So normally when we hire someone, they're an employee of Insight Global, my company.
Gotcha.
They're on contract. They're a contractor. Gotcha. So they're employed by us. And so, we're the ones that were paying them. We would fire them.
This is me being naive. So the company then pays you their salary, whatever you guys agree upon. Is that correct? And then you pay that person.
Right.
I'm following now.
There's some fees in the middle, right?
I got you. I'm following now.
Pretty much,
So you get to fire that person.
Don't get to. I don't know if that's the right. To.
I would want to fire that person because I would be like,
now that guy, I felt justified. I'm like, hey, dude, you kind of screwed up there.
You're paying too much for your drugs. First thing.
I can get you stuff much cheaper.
That was a fun one. So another time, last story I'll share. We were going to have to let someone go, and my recruiter, I said, hey, we got to let this person go on Friday. It was like a Wednesday. And he was trying to put a calendar reminder to himself so he wouldn't leave on Friday without letting the person go, but he accidentally sent it to the employee. So the employee gets a calendar invite saying,
pack your bag.
Fire Jim.
Bob. So we had to proceed with that one a little ahead of schedule.
I'm going to write that down.
That is the most savage way to fire somebody I've ever
It
heard.
wasn't good. That was on us, and we aren't perfect. So
I invite you to leave at this time.
I just want to circle back really quick. When you accidentally send a text, like even if it's nothing, like if I send a text message to my roofer that says I'll pick up broccoli, it's what I meant to my wife. I'm like, oh, that sounds I'm so stupid.
Yeah.
But then when you realize you send that to your boss and you're like, oh man, you can't go back. I'd probably just go quit.
Yeah, right. It was pretty. He was actually an awesome employee, and I think he's still around. He's not on my team anymore, but everyone makes mistakes, so I didn't hold it against him.
A couple.
We had a hard conversation about attention to detail, but
that's probably important.
Yeah.
I felt like I shouldn't have to say this, but don't text your boss asking for drugs.
When you're buying drugs, do it this way.
That's
so
funny.
There's been, countless other situations. The job is not boring, that's for sure. It's always different, always interesting.
Do you ever find out, like, I'm sure you do. I'm guessing when in the process. Do you ever find out somebody that's just totally like lied on their resume, and as you're digging into it, you're like, this person doesn't have anything, or you find out a little bit later in the process?
Yeah, I've had folks more so like misrepresent skills. So, for example, listing, I worked with XYZ software when really maybe they opened the application one time. And so then we go to interview them, and it's clear that, okay, you stretched that a bit. Yeah. So there haven't been many circumstances where a resume is just completely fabricated. Mm-hmm. Other examples would be someone, bachelor's degree, expected graduation in May, and really they know that's they're not going to graduate in May. So there's things like that. A certification that's expired and they still have it on there. But
do you have any services for? Surely there's some people that are highly talented and skilled that are not good at resumes. So do you have services for these people that'll be like, hey, you need to work on your resume, or send them in the right direction? Or
we always give them feedback, right? I've gotten the 15-page resumes. I've gotten the half-a-page resumes. There's a happy medium. That's not really our core capabilities, but we will definitely send you examples, templates, give you feedback, give you input, help you to cater your resume to a specific job. That's something that we help with a lot.
Sure.
I think, writing your resumes can seem overwhelming when you're starting from scratch. So we can always give you, point you in the right direction.
Do the people that your recruiters are working with, are they still allowed to like post things on like are they signing a contract with your recruiters as well? So like, are they still allowed to post things on like, whatever it is, ZipRecruiter or all that kind of stuff? So they can still open it. So you guys may be working with them and trying to find them jobs, but they can still also be working.
Absolutely. The candidates never pay us anything, right? Mm-hmm. We're getting paid from, the companies that hire them. So it's a free service to a candidate, and there's no, contractual obligation for them to work with us exclusively or anything like that. We understand that they need to probably keep their options open, especially if they're really active in between jobs, things like that. Our goal is to build such a good relationship with them that we can present them with multiple opportunities, not just one, and let them, vet out what's best for them. Mm-hmm. I know most people would like to be able to just have that one point of contact and, keep it easy, keep it streamlined. So that's our goal. That's what we want to achieve. But of course we understand they're going to get other calls.
I gotcha.
Yeah.
I gotcha. That makes sense.
How does your, your company, how can you differentiate yourself, or how do you differentiate yourself from a firm like ZipRecruiter or some of those other online kind of distant ones?
Yeah. The online companies are, a decent way if you're just looking for a one-off hire. You're probably not going to hire consistently. It's not that hard of a position to find. That might work for you. It may take a while. I think it's just, accuracy by volume with those databases. You're going to have to go through and do our job for us, right? Interview, we're interviewing hundreds of candidates. My one recruiter would probably interview at least 10 candidates a day. They're probably going to call 40 to 50 people a day. And I have, we've got 2,000 recruiters doing that. So just doing all the vetting, making all the calls, it's just going to take you a lot longer as a business owner to do that. So if you can trade off that time, then it might be worth it. If you're going to be hiring frequently enough that it's an opportunity cost, if you don't want to spend the time on doing that and you don't have someone to do it, you can outsource it to us and we'll do it for you.
Right.
So how are your recruiters getting the lead? Like, obviously some of these people still probably have jobs and maybe they may be a good fit. How are they getting the leads and calling these people? Do you have like a system, a software?
We have an internal database with, I think, close to 2 million resumes in it at this point nationwide. So we're going to look there first because those are people who aren't necessarily going to have their resumes posted online. We're going to look on all the job boards, LinkedIn, Indeed, Career Builder, Monster. We use a lot of like referral based. I mean, we have last year alone, the company placed over 50,000 consultants.
Oh, wow.
So we use a referral program too. I mean, if you're a current consultant and you have a similar skill set, you might know someone. So the networking side of things as well is a big factor.
Right.
That makes sense.
Yeah.
What kind of advice can you give our listeners about the value of network and that just the value of network, building yourself a network?
It's huge. It's everything. I think for career growth, you just never know who you might interact with today that could be in a position to help you out a year from now, 2 years from now. It happens all the time. So any opportunities, especially if you're someone who's in the job market, any opportunity you can take to just get out there in person, I would say too, is a huge factor. A lot of times what sets you apart is, picking up the phone, answering the call from the recruiter, connecting with people on LinkedIn, going to the job fairs. I mean, those things sound tedious when you're in the market, but they can really take you a long way.
Right.
So,
networking is every career is a big part of it.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. I mean, if you get out and somebody that you meet now in 3 years, they may be really important. You didn't realize. Right. So that's
happened important. So many times in my career where I meet someone casually and then, even some of the contractors that I'll place in a job go on to be, managers, directors at these companies. And so just treating people with respect and, really making sure you take every opportunity to get to know the people you interact with.
I think a lot of people, foolishly, they don't learn that lesson.
Yeah.
They just think, I'm just going to do my job and, my job will speak for itself. And they're not the most pleasant people to work with. Yeah. But then they pay the price and they end up just being this kind of siloed person that no one really likes working with. Yeah. And their work speaks for itself. All right.
Yeah. Cause you do have to work with other people. It is
100%.
Part of the thing.
There's very few positions that you just sit at a desk by yourself.
Alone,
yeah.
What the heck was I just going to ask? I had a really good question.
I'm sorry.
Threw you off.
It threw me off. That's what I was going to ask. After COVID, obviously there was a big switch. What has been the change of people that like are demanding have to work from home at least part of the time? Because I know like Andrew, he'll be here in a couple minutes. He was working for a company. I don't know if you remember that they were after COVID. They were like, you guys have to come back in the office.
Oh yeah, he's miffed about that.
Yeah, he
always refers to them as boomers.
Yeah, he's like, I'm just gonna go find a different job so I can work from home.
But he's like 24.
Yeah, the boomers. The boomers.
It's been crazy to watch. 2020 through 2022 were kind of unicorn years in my industry. for the amount of remote opportunities that were out there, and also for the amount of candidates. It was a candidate's job market, meaning you can find if you have any sort of skilled, technical background, you can find a remote job out there.
Yeah.
So you can leave your current job and you can most certainly find something else. There's going to be a remote job for you. You have people leaving their jobs left and right, finding remote opportunities. And so that made it challenging in a lot of ways, just because the jobs that were still requiring some sort of hybrid or on-site, post-COVID 2021, 2022, they were a lot harder to fill. Or the companies that did return to office in those years, they struggled a lot. So they would come to us and ask for help. It's actually, I'm starting to see it shift the other way.
Back
where
to in person.
Yeah. A lot of companies are return to office, at least on a hybrid schedule, which I think is a good happy medium, right? I see the benefit of having that in-person interaction. I also think people are now used to having the flexibility of working from home. And so if you can give them maybe a day or two from home, it really will help a lot. But I've started to see it shift the other direction to where there actually aren't as many remote jobs out there as there used to be. And so I think candidates in the market are probably starting to see that as well. Like, oh yeah, a couple years ago, I could have gotten a job remotely and now I can't.
Yeah, that's right.
So it's starting to go the other direction. So that's been interesting for sure.
Yeah, I think when that started, everybody was like, this is the new way we work.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But there's still some of us are like, you have to work in person. Some people are going to have to work in person.
Yeah.
It
because you got to talk.
Makes things way more efficient. Like, people want to do Zooms or team meetings and then email, but it's far less efficient to do it that way.
Oh, yeah.
Than it is to do just immediate feedback. And so some of those jobs they need to happen. So I was always on the thought that it's going to go back at some point to in-person, maybe a hybrid, because some people some people really can be efficient at home and do the same thing they're doing in the office, and it gives them a little flexibility to not have to do,
Right.
And as an employer, if you're hiring the right people, you should trust that they're going to be as work as hard as they do at home as they do in the office.
Yeah. The thing that I think folks that argue for, I can do all my job remotely and I don't need to come in and work with others, what they miss is now every communication has to be purposeful and scheduled. You can't just like run into a guy at the hallway, start talking about this subject that's kind of important but not worthy of a meeting or an email or anything like that. You clear it up and you're done in like 30 seconds.
Right.
That and hallway conversations or meetings, you end up the after the meeting is probably way better than the actual meeting. All that does, it's like a plow. A plow, what it does is it turns over the soil, so it kills the weeds and that sort of thing, because the roots germinate, and then once they get turned over, the sun dries them out. They're not going to work anymore. Then days later, you disc it up to start planting. Well, that meeting is like the plow. It turns everything over. Now everybody starts to think, oh, that's right. We need to do these things because I heard, Sam talk about this and Joe talk about that.
Yeah, that makes sense.
A lot of, especially with what I do, relationship-based, sales-based, yesterday I was on a meeting in person with a potential customer, and had a meeting following that, and just so happened that someone else was sitting in his office who needed to hire someone. And so, there's countless examples of how just being there can benefit you. And, there's definitely a happy medium. And as an employer, if you can offer that flexibility, you're going to attract more talent, and you can also drive down cost. If you truly can, do the job remotely, you can probably get someone to, take the job for less money, and you can open up to a whole new pool of people that, aren't local to the area. So there's definitely pros and cons.
Sure. Yeah, absolutely. Well, we are at about the 40-minute mark.
Okay.
And that's usually where we start tying things up. We could talk endlessly about
this has flown by.
interviews.
Yeah.
It has flown by. I told you it was easy.
Yeah, it goes by quick.
Told you it was easy.
Yeah.
We've appreciated you and your perspective and some of the stories that you told about your work. I know everybody eventually looks for a job somewhere.
That's true.
So, folks, hopefully the listener got a lot out of this.
Yeah.
You have any closing comments or questions, Dusty?
No, it was very informative.
It was very informal. Well, we're wearing T-shirts, so it's informal.
Yeah.
I didn't get the memo.
Yeah. When I walked in, I was like, I'm about to put on a gross T-shirt. I feel kind of bad.
Well, that's why I wore this.
I'm going to expect a podcast T-shirt
We'll get you
at
the
some
shirt.
point.
Yes, we will get you a shirt
Okay.
with a QR code on the back,
Oh,
so it
okay.
can be scanned.
Yeah, you see,
All right.
somebody can scan it and go.
Walking
listen to our episode.
marketing for you.
That's
there you
right.
go.
That's my
But
idea.
it was very fun, and I'm glad I got to ask some of those questions because it's something I never really put too much thought into. It's very interesting. So
Thank you so much for having me. It was good to get to come on and conversate with you guys, and yeah, I appreciate it.
All right.
Thank
Thanks
you
for
so
coming.
much.
And we will see you next week on Mishmash Men.
see you guys.
See ya.